So as I mentioned in my edge orientation video, which if you haven't seen that one yet, please go and give it a watch, F2L cases that start with a good edge, you can always solve using only R, L, and U turns. Now, when an algorithm only requires turning two sides of the cube, like R and U or L and U, you'll often see this referred to as 2gen, which stands for 2 generator. So a better way to put this is that any F2L case that starts with a good edge, as long as none of the pieces are in an incorrect slot or something, you'll be able to solve using 2gen algorithms. And what's good about 2gen algorithms is that since you're only having to manage two sides of the cube, you can just turn really fast. So this F2L case, for example, a lot of people struggle with this one, but the standard 2gen solution is to just put the pair over here, insert the corner, bring your edge over, line up the pair, and then insert it like that. Or the other way that you can do this is by starting with a hedge, which lines up the pair over here, and then just insert it this way. So I think both of these are perfectly fair ways of solving that case. But just for comparison, the one that starts with a hedge is 8 turns, whereas the 2gen algorithm is 11 turns, but they both take about the same amount of time because when you're only having to turn two sides of the cube, you can turn a lot faster. So when you're dealing with a bad edge case, a really useful tool is algorithms that are called F2gen F prime, which basically just means that you do an F turn, followed by a 2gen algorithm, and then you finish by reversing the F turn with an F prime. Or for your left hand, of course, you just do an F prime, followed by a 2gen LU algorithm, and then reverse that with an F. So F2gen F prime algorithms can be very fast because most of the algorithm is 2gen, and then the reason that you need to incorporate F turns at the beginning and end is just to turn bad edge cases into good edge cases. Now here's an example of how this works. So this F2L case starts with a good edge, which you can see by taking your F2L edge and then just line it up with the side center pieces, and then check if the colors are either opposite or matching. So this is a good edge, which means we'll be able to solve this using only R and U turns. So the standard 2gen solution for this case is just R, U2, R prime, which connects your pair, and then you just insert it. Now one thing I want you to notice is that when I do that R, U2, R prime, it changes the pieces that are in this slot. Now normally we don't care about these because these are just top layer pieces that we're going to deal with later anyways. But the point is we're taking advantage of the fact that this slot is open in order to connect our pair. Now when you encounter this as a bad edge though, now we have a problem because our slot over here on the right side is not open anymore. So when we try to do the same solution, it mixes up what we've already solved over here. Now if this slot is open, you're perfectly welcome to use it, obviously. But if it's not open, then this is where F2gen F prime comes into play. Now here's how this works. If you take a look at this block of 4 solve pieces that we have here in the front, we have an open slot on the left, but we need an open slot on the right. When you do that first F turn, it's going to take these pieces that we don't care about and put them into the top layer. It's going to take a couple other pieces that we don't care about, put them into the right slot, and the whole block just shifts over. Which means basically we've just turned our open slot on the left into an open slot on the right. Which means now we can just solve this case the way we already know how. Put the corner over here, R, U2, R prime, creates the pair without mixing up anything that we care about, and then just go ahead and insert it. Now that almost works, except obviously we don't want the pair over here, we want it on the left. So if we back up, you'll notice that when we do that R, U2, R prime, U2, that actually connects our pair here to the whole rest of the block, which means that we don't need to do the last 3 moves to insert it. We can just replace that with an F prime to insert everything. Which means that altogether, a valid solution for this bad edge F2L case is F, U, R, U2, R prime, U2, F prime. Now to show you that, I went out of my way to make sure that the F2L pieces would be out of the way of that first F turn. However, it turns out that if your corner is over here in the front, so that it's going to be affected by the F turn, that's actually okay, because all this does is it just sets up into a different F2L case that you already know how to solve. Like for example, for this, you can create your pair like that, attach it to the block, and then F prime to insert it. Or if you have your corner over here, the F turn just sets up into another F2L case that you already know how to solve. Create your pair, attach it to the block, F prime to insert it. Which means that to learn this, you don't actually need anything new. You definitely don't need to sit and stare at lists of algorithms and try to memorize anything. All that you need to do is just when you're doing casual solves, anytime you come across a bad edge F2L case, just go ahead and do an F turn, and then try and see if you can figure out how to solve it using what you already know. So here's another example. This is a bad edge F2L case. If you come across something like this during a casual solve, then just go ahead and do an F turn, and then see if you can figure out how to connect this pair. You could do something like that, attach it to the block, and then F prime to insert it. Or if your corner happens to be over here, then just go ahead and do an F. That sets up to a really good case. RU to R prime creates the pair and attaches it to the block. Now the one I definitely wouldn't do is the edge in front, because that messes with your edge orientation. But if you have your corner over here, this one I also wouldn't do in a real solve. I would do a U to set up into a different case, because this just isn't the best case. But just so you can see how it works, the way I would normally solve this F2L case is with the double sexy. That creates the pair, and then now you're going to have to do a U2 to get it out of the way of this R prime, and then F prime to insert everything. So you're not going to love every single one of these cases, but as you experiment with it, you'll be able to come up with which cases you like and which cases that you don't. And if you haven't experimented with it before, I guarantee you'll be able to come up with basically your own ways of solving bad edge F2L cases without a rotation using what you already know.